Today we delve into a high-stakes international energy drama that goes beyond the automotive world. In this video, we'll explore how Canada's bold threat to cut off crucial electricity exports could reshape the U.S. energy market and global trade ties. We'll examine ripple effects in oil exports, tariff battles, and political power plays, uncovering the deep interconnections in our economies. Stay tuned as we break down every facet of this dramatic showdown. Number 7. The shockwave. Canada's bold electricity cut threat. In a stunning move, Canadian leaders have warned they may sharply reduce or suspend electricity exports to key U.S. states. States such as New York, Michigan, and Minnesota depend on nearly 95% of their power imports from Ontario. Such a cut could trigger soaring energy bills, grid instability, and even localized blackouts during peak periods. Analysts stress that this threat is not merely symbolic, but a strategic counter to U.S. tariffs, leveraging energy as a bargaining chip. The move highlights the vulnerabilities inherent in an interdependent energy network, with potential ripple effects across manufacturing, technology, and other sectors. As U.S. policymakers scramble for alternative solutions, this dramatic tactic may force a reassessment of energy policies and redefine trade negotiations between the two nations. This bold strategy could reshape North America. Number 6. Crude control. Oil as a political lever. While electricity headlines steal the spotlight, Canadian oil exports are a crucial gear in the energy engine. The U.S. relies heavily on Canadian crude, with pipelines like Keystone XL and Enbridge forming the backbone of its supply. Recently, about 6.1 million barrels per day have been imported, with roughly 67% coming from Canada amid rising U.S. tariffs. Canadian leaders are hinting at a potential oil export cut, a move that could send oil prices surging. Even a temporary disruption might force industries to seek pricier alternatives, impacting everything from commuter fuel costs to industrial operations. This tit-for-tat maneuver not only underscores the interdependency of North American energy, but also highlights how a slight hiccup in oil exports can reverberate through global markets and long-term policy strategies. Number 5. Tariff turbulence. North American trade clashes. The escalating trade war between the U.S. and Canada has become a battleground of tariffs, trade restrictions, and retaliatory moves fueled by America First policies favoring domestic production. The U.S. has imposed sweeping tariffs on goods like steel, aluminum, and consumer products. In response, Canada, vital for energy, raw materials, and technology, has countered with proposals that may include restrictions on oil, electricity, and rare earth metals. These measures have created ripple effects across various sectors, raising prices, disrupting supply chains, and impacting energy security and automotive manufacturing. Market volatility and debates over economic sovereignty underscore the stakes. Amid this tension, one must ask, can North America balance protectionism with global interdependence for a sustainable trade equilibrium? Before we delve deeper, do us a favor and smash that like and subscribe button. This helps us reach more auto enthusiasts just like you. Now let's shift gears and steer towards our next point. Number 4. Interwoven economies. The cross-border energy and material dance. Underneath tariff debates and political posturing lies a complex network of economic interdependencies binding the U.S. and Canada. American industries rely on a steady influx of Canadian energy and raw materials, from crude oil and natural gas to critical minerals like cobalt, nickel, and lithium that keep factories running and power sectors like automotive and aerospace. In 2024, U.S. imports of Canadian energy products reached billions, underscoring that even a powerhouse like the U.S. cannot operate in isolation. However, this interdependence is a double-edged sword. While it fuels production, it also creates vulnerabilities during political tensions. Disruptions could trigger higher production costs, rising consumer prices, and lost global competitiveness. Thus, preserving stable, open trade is essential for sustaining innovation, industry growth, and economic stability in an interconnected world. Open trade fuels progress. Number 3. Economic dominoes. How trade disruptions impact industries and consumers. Tariffs and trade skirmishes send shockwaves well beyond boardrooms, affecting everyday consumers and industries alike. The U.S., heavily reliant on Canadian energy exports from crude oil and natural gas to electricity, faces potential disruptions that force industries to scramble for costlier alternatives. Even minor hiccups can trigger production delays, soaring operating costs, and rising prices. This domino effect reaches all corners of the economy, from automotive manufacturing to essential services. When one component is delayed or priced higher, the ripple effect can lead to increased fuel costs and inflated product prices for consumers. Essentially, every tariff imposed risks jamming the economic engine, pushing us closer to widespread inflation and an overall slowdown. Number 2. Diplomatic drifts, the strategic game of trade. Trade is a global chess match, and the U.S. and Canada are intensifying their political maneuvers to safeguard national interests. U.S. policies boosting domestic production, conflict with North America's interdependent economy, prompting Canadian leaders to leverage their role as key energy and raw material suppliers. Their countermeasures, such as potential electricity export cuts and discussions on oil restrictions, aim to pressure American decision-makers challenging the U.S. energy grid and forcing a reassessment of protectionist policies. These high-stakes moves ripple beyond economics, affecting border security, technology investments, and government contracts. Third parties, like Mexico, are watching closely. Overall, each diplomatic maneuver carries risks and rewards, shaping the long-term framework of international trade and security. In today's interconnected world, these moves underscore a fierce global contest. This rivalry is reshaping global power balances. Number 1. Pricing and policy, impacting your wallet and the future. After exploring energy exports, tariffs, and political strategy, we now focus on how these factors hit your wallet. Disruptions in established trade can trigger immediate price swings. For instance, if Canada restricts its electricity exports, American households and businesses could face steep energy bills during peak demand. Likewise, limits on Canadian crude crucial to U.S. imports might push up gasoline prices, affecting freight manufacturing and everyday goods. Tariffs on raw materials and consumer products add further cost pressures, potentially increasing vehicle prices and overall living expenses. Policymakers now face a balancing act, protecting domestic jobs while managing the realities of a globally interconnected trade network. Ultimately, these pricing and policy shifts shape both our economic stability and long-term growth. Final lap, navigating the energy trade frontier. In summary, our journey has taken us from the explosive threat of cutting electricity exports to the intricate pricing impacts hitting your wallet. We've uncovered how energy dependencies, economic dominoes, and political power plays are reshaping the trade dynamics between Canada and the U.S. The stakes are transformative, and the road ahead promises to be as dynamic as the engines we love. What are your thoughts on how these trade moves might affect the automotive world and your everyday expenses? Share your experiences in the comments below. If you enjoyed this ride, be sure to subscribe for more vehicle updates and upcoming videos. Your insights helped drive our journey forward, fueling discussions and innovations in the automotive industry. Thanks for tuning in and riding with us at Piston Pundit. See you next time. Why this counterpunch could redraw the global supply chain map. Don't forget to hit subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss any of our latest political economic updates. Within just 72 hours, the White House's decision to dust off Section 232 turned a once familiar 25% measure into a 50% slash applied to every steel and aluminum shipment landing at U.S. ports. The official communique spelled out a defense capability gap. The Pentagon fears that continued reliance on foreign metal could leave submarine and F-35 production lines starving for feedstock precisely as global tensions climb. On paper, the aim is to yank the made-in-USA supply chain back home. In reality, the spotlight lands squarely on America's closest neighbor. Canada now supplies 22% of America's imported steel and fully 47% of its aluminum, the world's largest share, while shipping over 90% of its own metal output southward. Canada data show that in 2024 alone, metals and related industries poured more than $41 billion U.S. into bilateral trade and supported 100,000 plus direct and indirect jobs along the Great Lakes Industrial Belt. Yet, after the early June G7 summit in Alberta, once Ottawa flatly refused to sign Washington's zero-tariff annex, President Trump instantly cranked the volume knob to double. The 50% rate kicked in at 000 on the 4th of June. The U.S. Treasury reckons the new levy could reindustrialize 6.5 million tons of domestic steel capacity. Wall Street, by contrast, immediately leapt up to 14% off Detroit 3 profit forecasts as input costs soared. Canada did not wait long. 24 hours later, Prime Minister Mark Carney rolled out an automatic 25% tariff on $29.8 billion USD of U.S. goods, from tractors to cookies, and triggered a fresh federal procurement rule. National infrastructure orders worth $11 billion USD, now open only to bidders from nations exempt from steel and aluminum duties. The move hurts Washington's wallet and signals to Brussels and Tokyo that if the closest NATO ally can be branded a security threat, no one is safe from a tariff policy that can flip color with a dawn tweet. Ironically, the White House had cited a record trade deficit with Canada to justify its strike. Reality shows that 2024 saw a mere $41 billion USD gap, dwarfed by the hundreds of billions with China or the EU, largely because the U.S. imports heavy crude and clean energy from Alberta for domestic refining. In other words, the 50% blow targets the very fuel feedstock most vital to U.S. defense and logistics. Backstage, negotiators say the post-G7 table collapsed in the opening act. Washington demanded Ottawa promise not to sue at the WTO and fix export quotas, terms Canada called tying our own hands. As both sides left, Carney reportedly quipped, "If you build a tariff wall, we'll build a bypass," hinting at Ottawa's fast-tracked minerals alliance with the EU to ship cobalt, nickel, and lithium, three linchpins of Washington's clean energy drive straight overseas. With tariffs live, damage has spread beyond ledgers. Unifor, Canada's largest private sector union, warns thousands of metallurgical workers lost jobs in the first 2 months, a figure that could shoot into the tens of thousands as auto and aerospace firms, North American parts orders. South of the border, a U.S. Congressional Research Service report concedes every pricier ton of steel adds $130 to the cost of a pickup. Detroit's top profit maker, roughly $1,300 on an aluminum frame premium model. Selling prices rise, orders fall, and the layoff spiral turns back on the U.S. labor market. In short, Mr. Trump's 50% strike is no mere patriotic club swung at a foreign rival. It is shaking a two-way supply chain worth tens of billions and threatens to rip apart the world's deepest production alliance. The question now: who will seize the gap as the metal iron curtain drops between North America's two closest brothers? Prime Minister Mark Carney didn't just slam a 25% fist onto 29.8 billion Canadian of U.S. goods, about 21.8 billion U.S. He also wired in an unprecedented time bomb fuse. The tariff schedule will auto-review every 14 days at most, depending on the pace of talks with Washington. Canada's finance ministry calls it the clutch mechanism, letting Ottawa tighten or loosen duties on the spot to hit the wallet of Trump's pivotal swing states without whiplashing Canadian firms. To keep his grip nimble, Carney set up twin steel and aluminum task forces reporting every half month. All price, stock, and import-export data must reach Ottawa within 24 hours. Reuters quoted the Prime Minister saying, "If the U.S. drags negotiations for one more tweet, we'll twist the tariff knob in the very next session." A thinly veiled warning that the timetable now runs on a countdown clock, not diplomatic calendars. Simultaneously, Canada activated a from-furnace-to-foundry quota. Every coil of steel, every billet of aluminum must prove its melt and pour point lies inside a friendly nation. The quota backdates to the 1st of January 2025 and locks at 100% of 2024 output. Anything above that ceiling is slapped with extra duty. Just 48 hours after the decree, a 4,500-ton U.S. steel shipment worth $5.6 million was stranded in containers on Vancouver's dock for failing to verify its metal pour origin. The image of stacked boxes became a Reuters headline that very afternoon. The next blow targets the supply chain directly. Every project financed with federal money, from bridges and pipelines to defense housing, must use 100% domestic steel and aluminum, or import only from reciprocal duty-free partners. The United Steel Workers Union cheered, estimating that the $47 billion Canadian infrastructure and defense package for 2025 to 2027 alone could suck up an extra 2.3 million tons of Canadian steel a year, while striking U.S. contractors off bid lists. Unless they build plants north of the Niagara, repercussions rippled almost instantly. The American Metals Export Association warned that 12% of flat steel orders were canceled within a week, while RBC Capital Markets projected both economies could lose 0.2 percentage points of GDP if the tit-for-tat drags through Q3. Strategically, though, Ottawa's message is crystal